Cultural appropriation. One of the many thought-terminating cliches used to silence somebody who is doing something that is to someone else cultural appropriation, as a means to either guilt that person into apologizing, stop what they're doing, or make that person look even more stupid, or, the more obvious one here, person who is accusing someone of culturally appropriating as if it is in any way a negative thing, looks like an absolute muppet. Step in Dawn Butler, who you would think, surely because of her name alone, is culturally appropriating the name Dawn as it is an Old English name along with the name Butler. Surely you would want to call yourself something more culturally accurate. Since cultural appropriation is such an issue to you, might I recommend Shaniqua, and instead of Butler, perhaps Slave? They're the same thing, and I don't see a problem with that, do you? And now before someone accuses me of racism, yes, I'm being facetious on purpose. I hope you understand that. She was recently on Twitter berating Jamie Oliver for his jerk rice blah blah recipe. To be clear, the recipe wasn't jerk in the slightest, but I would also add, it is not cultural appropriation to use the word jerk, as the word jerk has multiple meanings. It is, however, really stupid to put jerk on a recipe that isn't jerk by definition. But I don't think that's what mattered to you. It was the capitalist part that bothered you the most. And because Jamie Oliver is white, much like you, Dawn Butler, you decided to try and guilt him into apologizing for wanting to make money, something which he is remarkably good at, even back in the old day of the Naked Chef. Yeah, I'm that old. Now this does allow us to quickly talk about cultural appropriation, because I do think it is a thing, but I do not see it as a negative, and I see no reason to regard it as a negative. Cultures come from other countries all the times to this country, and they adopt ours, or we adopt some of theirs. Is it cultural appropriation? No. If a plain white person goes to Japan and fully integrates within Japan, but comes home and has still retained some of the elements of Japanese culture, are they culturally appropriating? No. And this applies to any other country. This applies to any other culture. It is appreciation, adoption, integration. So for me, I don't see the point in insulting someone for wanting to make money, but that is the state of the current New Labour. New Labour? They're not really capitalist. Kind of like some of the elements of the DNC, which I'm not going to argue about today. I don't really care. You can hate capitalism all you like, but if you're going to use things like cultural appropriation, perhaps come up with a better argument, since your only real argument was the fact that he just wanted to make money off something that wasn't actually jerk by definition. Anyway, now that I've gotten that out of my system, perhaps we'll delve into some injustice I noticed on the Twatters. That really, really irked me. There were two cases that bugged me, but the one we're going to focus on today, Texas doctor found guilty of raping sedated patient, won't have to serve any prison time. How? How is this man not strapped to a chair? How is this man not in prison for life even? I'm not condoning the death penalty, but it is something that does occur to me since, you're in Texas. The Houston police chief said it is beyond troubling that a Texas doctor will not be going to prison after a jury found him guilty of raping a heavily sedated hospital patient. Chief Art Acevedo, I do apologize for the pronunciation if I got it wrong, was referring to Shafiq Sheikh, the former doctor who not allegedly now, raped a patient in a hospital room in 2013, and was only sentenced to 10 years of probation last week. How? He has been found guilty of raping someone, but he's taken this a step further. He has raped somebody that is heavily sedated. That person never knew what happened, for the most part. I don't know if the mind notices things when they're sedated. I should look into that at some point. He has abused his position and his profession for sexual gratification. In doing so, obviously he loses his license, he should be on a sex offenders register, and he should be serving the rest of his natural-born life in a prison cell. Not 10 years of probation. That's a joke. A hideous crime is committed in a hospital room which should be a sanctuary for patients. So many new norms that run contrary to what we've always stood for. I pray no accountability for harming people isn't one of them. That punishment also surprised defense attorneys. Imagine my shock. When you're a doctor, I'd expect you'd get prison time. We hold doctors to a higher standard. But after a 14-hour deliberation over 2 days, The 12-person jury did not recommend that Sheik spend any time behind bars. This jury is absolutely addled, and you would have to be to think that somebody that committed this crime is guilty, but not worthy of going to prison. There are no mitigating factors here that, for even a second, would make me think this man belongs on the outside. After being presented all the evidence, the jury convicted this man of rape and decided that he should be sentenced to 10 years of probation. The jury voted on behalf of the community to determine his sentence, and although prosecutors sought prison time, we respect this process and the jury's decision. When people find out what he did, he's going to get hurt. Isn't there an open carry with swords in Texas now? I'm not recommending he get hurt, by the way, nor condoning it. I think he belongs in prison, and I think all of you agree with this. This is a miscarriage of justice by the jury as well. You have made a fundamental mistake in allowing someone like this to serve 10 years probation. That is a joke. Sheik was working a night shift at the Houston hospital when the female patient, identified only as Laura, was staying overnight because she was struggling to breathe. During the November night, Sheik allegedly assaulted the patient 7 times in a hospital room. The woman was heavily sedated when she was assaulted. During the trial, the now 32-year-old victim said she tried to call a nurse during the first assault, but the button didn't work, and he came back 2 more times to rape her without a condom. I would assume if he didn't pull out, that was where the evidence was found. This sick fool should not be allowed on the streets. Now, I know probation doesn't mean he's actually out and about, but probation is a remarkably light sentence for this crime, and it is inconsistent with so many other places. Also makes Texas look bitch-made. I'm just saying, you'd have to be to think that this man should be even for a second allowed to walk about, semi-free. After the assault, the woman reported that she was taken advantage of. It took a 2-year investigation before Sheik was arrested, with attorney Lisa Andrews saying he made a mistake but he didn't sexually assault her. Here we have this Latina woman with her fake boobs that came onto that little nerdy middle-aged guy and he lost his mind. Ah, you tried to defend him with character assassination of her. How interesting. I never really understood how that could be used as a defense, but then again, I just don't get any of it. The sooner they introduce judges to the system, and I mean judges like myself, the better. Now, to give a somewhat interesting comparison, a man in London was sentenced to 11 years for raping 3 women. I personally don't think the Met should have been celebrating this. I believe it should have been 11 years for each victim. But they were celebrating, I assume, because justice has been served in their mind. They are deluded, but at least he is in prison and not on probation. Many will argue, and rightly so, that the United Kingdom's prison system is absolutely fudged. Much like that of the US apparently, where injustice seems to be a prevailing characteristic in the country's criminal justice system. It is quite embarrassing. The sooner I'm allowed to administer the law, the better. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. In both these cases, both men should be in prison for what most should consider to be their natural-born lives, but instead, one is going to get a second chance in more than likely 5.5 years and the other is on probation for 10 years, so chances are he'll be able to get a job stacking shelves in some quaint little area where apparently he won't be such a burden to the community that seemed to love him enough. Certainly the jury's an indicator of this, since they were doing it on behalf of the community to give him 10 years probation. Idiots. I hope everyone has a lovely Tuesday, and thank you all for listening.
Oh, goddowns.
In your arse.
Imagine my shock